From the world of AV programming and control with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. Hey, James, I'm glad we're back, and this is going to be a very exciting show. We have some special guests today. How are you?
Oh yeah, it's great to be back, Steve. Hope you're doing well, but I'm looking forward to hearing from our guests. These two are they're characters, so they get that.
So without further ado, we got to spend some time with these folks at Infocom. We did a recording on their podcast, and be sure to check that out. We'll be talking a little bit about their podcast. But they are known as the AV Bald Guys, and they are George Chacko and Rich Miller from Pace University. Welcome, George. Welcome,
Hey,
Rich.
hey, hey. Hey guys, thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for being with us. And you guys do a great podcast, and we want to co-promote that. So please check out Cables, Coffee, and Curveballs on your favorite podcast player. It's a lot of fun. It's not just about AV. It's not just it's a combination of things, and I like what you do in bringing out the personality in those people in the AV industry. So great job with that.
Thanks a
Thank
lot,
you.
Steve. We try. It's actually not by design. It just kind of happens on the show.
Yeah.
And it worked for us the first 3 episodes, and we've just been running with it.
Well, it's a lot of the things that people in AV like, so that's a good thing, and I relate to them, so it drew me in.
Awesome.
Let's talk a little bit about your background, and you guys both come from the AV space in higher ed. You've been with Pace University for quite some time, but you're not just involved in AV as you would think of in a university. You're also involved in the education part, which is really cool. So, George, I'll start with you. Give us a little bit about your background,
Sure.
and also how you could speak to our audience that is either programmers or people who want to learn more about programming and control.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having us on the show. My story starts back in 1980. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, like as most of our AV family did not start in the AV world at all, right? I was a computer science major at Pace University, and I just needed a weekend job. So I came out of the classroom one day, and there was a sign for now hiring outside our educational media office. And I said, why not? Right. So I went in there. I had no idea what I was getting into. They told me all these things. I was like, great. What does it pay per hour? An hour. I'm not going to tell you exactly what that hourly pay rate was back then, because you might be able to put a finger. Anyways, I'll digress.
You already told them how old you are, George.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I just realized that too. We can edit that out, right?
Nope.
So I went in, and honestly, I just fell in love with AV right then and there. So I was, I think in my junior year, I started working full time. We were an Extron shop back then, so I did everything with Global Configurator, and everything was VGA back then. I am totally dating myself on this show. We didn't have any HDMI. It was all VGA. We had BNC cables and coax running everywhere. So that was my introduction to the world of AV. And once I left Pace for a couple of years. I went to Bloomberg. I was a staffer at Bloomberg, and that was really where my AV education started. That's when I realized how little I knew about the AV world. And they're very accurate. You got to fall off a bike before you learn how to ride a bike. And that was the moment. That was my falling off the bike moment. And I really, really scraped my knees and elbows, folks. Like, really, it was a rude awakening. You want me to do what now? I don't even know what that means. Like, you know what I mean? It was one of those moments. But somehow I fell in love with AV even more. And then when I had the opportunity to come back to Pace University, and Pace University is just such an amazing place to work. And I'm not just saying that. Like, it's really just an amazing place to work, and the opportunities within Pace for me to grow, and our leadership is fantastic. And it's just come to this point where my entire world revolves around AV. And that's the point during the pandemic where Rich and I had a discussion as to like, this was our starting point. This is everybody's story. Like, what can we do to change the story for the next generation? And that's how the AV degree program came about. We partnered with the MCVA department. We've already gotten one class, 20 students out the way. The next class is starting in a week and a half, from what Rich reminded me. And that section's closed off, and our 200 level course is going on spring of 2024. So just really exciting stuff. Looking forward to it. And I don't think I've taken up 20 minutes, so I'll give Rich a shot.
So thanks, George. So I have a similar path to George. George and I both start off as student workers, pushing can we say cows around, computers on wheels around?
Yeah.
They don't exist anymore, but in theory. But I started working in the back end in programming, website design, knew nothing about it out of high school, just learned on the fly, realized it wasn't for me. Shout out to my wife who worked for George as a student assistant in the AV department, told me about the job she had. I interviewed with George. We talked about sports for 30 minutes, and I walked out of there with a job making $7 an hour. I took a pay cut.
You're not supposed to say that out
Yeah,
loud.
I mean, it was over 20 years ago. I could say it out loud. But I took a pay cut. I was making double digits an hour, which back then, 20 years ago, was a lot. But in hindsight, that was the best decision I ever made. Went from student worker to evening supervisor, to manager. I went to the New York City campus, which is like a whole different world. I got a whole different understanding of AV down there, running projects alongside George. I then moved into a space after I got my master's into the more IT realm, but still doing AV stuff, right? We know AV and IT are, converging even more these days, and they have been. They always have been. In hindsight, George and I talk about this all the time. We've always done AV and IT, and nobody wanted to admit it, but they've always been hand in hand. The last 12 years now, I've worked specifically in the College of Arts and Sciences. But every project that comes up, I'm always working with George or somebody on his team. He and I both teach CIS 101 as adjuncts. So we teach students, basic Excel and Office and tech skills. And that branched out, like he said, in the pandemic. Suddenly we were like, hey, let's bring this AV degree idea to somebody. So being in the College of Arts and Sciences, George mentioned the MCVA department. It's the Media Communications and Visual Arts. So it's a lot of digital cinema, filmmaking, production type students who are already doing this stuff without really even realizing it, right? They're doing a lot of this out in the field, and they're learning it. And what we brought was like a kind of a niche thing, though, that didn't exist. And it doesn't exist because we're still building it. First higher ed, university to do it, but we're getting there. The first class is off the ground. George mentioned it ran in the spring. It's running again in the fall in a week and a half. And then there's 2 more courses that are going to start running in the spring. And then from there, they pick a 4th course. And my favorite part about this, and I'll wrap it up here with the program piece for now, they have to take an internship. All right. So our AV program is a minor right now. Obviously our big goal is to make it a major. But even for the minor, we're requiring them to take a 3-credit internship. And that's not something that's a normal thing, but we're really pushing the experiential learning. And we want them, AV is experiential, everything is hands-on, right? And we aren't just going to say that. A lot of people say experiential, it's a buzzword. Our department and the department that we're based out of and the courses that we're building truly are experiential. So that's kind of a summary of where we are now. And we're just really stoked that it's kind of taken off, and we're just going to keep building.
To me, that checks a lot of boxes in this industry. We're always looking for new people. Everybody needs to be educated on a regular basis, and it also very much ties into the fact that you're not only teaching this, but you're also doing it on your campus. So I think it's quite interesting, and really has a great common thread there. James, I don't know if you've heard of anything that's quite like this before, but I assume you would see similar value.
Oh, I definitely see the value in what Rich and George are doing. As they say, they're the first university, at least that I know, that have any kind of formal program. I know, like Rich and George, I was a student worker. I got all my training on the job. I didn't even get my AV training until I was full time, but again, all on the job. And I'm trying to instill that into my student workers here is give them tidbits. Like just earlier today, there was a problem in a room and they're working on it. And one of the other full-time guys came in and he's like, oh, do you? I'm like, nope, let them figure it out. I'm like, I'm watching them, let them figure it out, let them go through the steps. And he's like, oh, okay, no problem. And they did figure it out. So it was good.
Yeah, and we were talking with our friends over there at Atlantis Partners, just a quick plug in. I hope you don't mind that. But we were talking about how when they come out of school, they come out of, they have all these various degrees, anything but AV. So their learning curve is, 2 weeks to a month, depending who you're working with, depending on what they're doing. We're never going to flatten that curve, right? But if we can bring that curve down to, all right, you come in. So when I say go get me an HDMI cable, I'm just giving you an example. You know what an HDMI cable looks like, right? If I tell you to go give me, a female XLR to male XLR, you know what to go get it out of a pile and not be like, let me Google this real quick. So not flattening the curve, but at least really, really reducing that curve to a point where people can really hit the ground running by week 1, let's say.
Yeah.
Is that ambitious? I don't know.
George, piggybacking off of that, James, something you mentioned to us when you and Steve were on our podcast at Infocom, you talked about we took this to heart in a good way. It was great constructive criticism. You said we're too late, right? I'm sure you remember that. And George and I were like, we were like, wait, what? And then we were like, so I'm not going to go through that all again because it makes a lot of sense. You're right. So actually what we're doing right now is we're in the process of cultivating an event on campus, like a career fair at Pace, where we bus in local high schools. Even that might be too late, but we're starting with the high school level to get a head start on it. So I just wanted to tell you that thank you for saying that, because we started thinking like he's right. Like we're shrinking our pool by waiting for them to get to college. So let's start with high school. We have a couple contacts. Let's bust them in. We have a big setup at Pace that we can bring them in. Let's bring some of our contacts in to talk to them and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to give you a shout out for that, because that's something we're literally working on that right now to try to get that up and running for some time.
We're going to call it the James King Career Fair at Pace University.
Because people will run on that one. Going with that, what Rich was saying is, and not to dive more into it, but like even I think I was wrong, because when I first started hearing about research, especially for young females, I always heard around the 6th grade. They start, the young females start picking their career path.
Yeah.
Then I just heard research recently that it's now as young as 3rd grade.
Wild.
And I was like, whoa, wait, okay. So yes, the younger we can get to them, the better off we are.
Yeah. My daughter's starting 3rd grade, so that's mind blowing.
I got a middle schooler, 2 middle schoolers, and a preschooler.
Right,
yeah,
there you go.
my 10-year-old has wanted to be an architect since he was 6 years old, I think, and that I don't know where he gets that kind of drive from, but it's you're 100% right, and it's not just the students, because at that point parents are also influencing the students on the
Sure.
you know what I mean, like
Yep.
I want you to become a doctor. I don't think many people do that anymore, but there's always a little guidance there in that sense. So we want to do a career fair for the students as a level 1, and maybe the next summer we do another event at Pace where we invite the parents and have a session with them and just inform and put out more information for the folks that this is an industry that needs help, and we can, let's be honest, we can make your kids a lot of money.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. I think we need, as an industry, we need to do a better job of marketing that. I had a conversation with one of my student workers who's looking at graduation, and we were talking like what you're planning on. And he's an IT person, and yes, AV IT, we won't go there. But he was talking about like when he was younger, he was very good at gaming. But he's like, I don't want to be a professional gamer. He's like, I was really good at, but I don't want to be professional gaming. I'm like, all right. I go, what else can you do for gaming? He's like, well, I don't know. I'm like, AV. I'm like, setting up the projectors. He's like, I never thought of that. He's like, I can still game and do all this. I'm like, yes, it's a career path.
Yep.
It's actually interesting you say that, James. Our before we started this program, we took our Seidenberg School of Computer Science. We took them to a field trip to Crestron. And this was this winter before the pandemic, I think. And one of the students that came with us, programming major, computer science major, he had got his master's from Pace. I think he works for the DOJ now. And he came into Crestron and he was like, wow. I mean, he is like, I had no idea all this was there. He went on to intern there for a whole year in their, I want to say it was the R&D. No, I don't remember. Either ways, it was a long time ago. He went on to work there, and he still, every once in a while when I run into him, he still talks about that. And he was like, that was really eye-opening to me. And I don't think people realize the various levels there are within AV, but I sure as hell don't think they understand how much programming is involved. You know what I mean? Even now on construction projects, I feel like when I go into a meeting, people are looking at me like, why is it so complicated? All I want is a TV on the wall. No. It's I'm not getting a Vizio TV from Costco and putting it on your wall and running it 24/7. It's very different. You know what I mean? So I think we need to get that understanding. And Steve, you've mentioned this before. Control systems and programming is all of 1, maybe 2 pages in whatever AV textbooks exist. We need to go beyond that, and it starts with just appreciation for AV in general, right?
Yeah, that's something that's always baffled me, and it's probably one of my motivators to say there's this group of people who, and we talk about this on our show a lot, they tend to be kind of off on their own to figure it out. And
Right.
Those are the programmers. And yes, many of them have manufacturers that they could go to and get trained, but they're only seeing one side of a very multifaceted industry.
Right.
And I mean, I think that we have to do better. And the best place to come from is from within. Those of us that want to give back and want to help the next generation, because we all are going to get older. It's inevitable, and we have to leave something behind and equip people to follow in our footsteps.
I do think that one of the biggest advantages we have in the AV industry is that there's so many different companies from top to bottom, but when you get into the programming of it, when you get into the nitty-gritty, you really can grow and move around, because it's not like you're not learning a whole different language to program a touch panel from one to the other, right? The concepts remain the same, the ideas remains the same, the design remains the same, but it's also like a playground, because you really can, once you get to that coding, you're not limited to, all right, I'm trying to do XYZ because that's what I'm asked. Even for us, when we have a design, we have a layout of the touch panel, the way it's supposed to look, the feel in the classroom. If a programmer goes in and says, this is really cool, but if we add this button, it can do this, it could do that, and it's all just 2-3 lines of code. It's amazing what we can achieve in this field with the programming, with good programming. So I completely agree. There needs to be a lot more of that.
I'm gonna jump in. Steve, can I ask the programmer question now? Because I feel like it's a perfect segue.
I want to be mindful of time, but why don't we use that as a teaser for the next
Perfect.
episode?
All right, cool.
Excellent. Because we are going to have George and
I can't
Rich
wait
back
to ask it
for another one. So, but before we wrap up, and I do want to continue this conversation because I had a follow up as well. But tell us a little bit about your podcast. Tell us a little bit about where it came from, what you guys talk about, do a little promo, but also what are maybe 1 or 2 things you've learned since you've been doing it, because you have quite a number of episodes out.
I'll go quick because I know George probably really wants to jump in. He's itching, I can tell. But
I was gonna say I'll let you do it because I'll go 20 minutes long.
No, I was just cleaning some stuff up last night. I realized we have 12 episodes from season 1, and then we dropped 8 short episodes from Infocom, one of which was with the 2 of you. So we have 20 episodes out there on Spotify right now, which was it kind of blew my mind actually. It started off as hey, let's do a podcast. And George and I have always talked about doing things. It's never, you never know if you're going to follow through on it, but we tried it and we're like, oh, this is pretty cool. First couple were a little rocky. We have some great support at Pace that helps us. Shout out Sweet Lou. Who helps us produce these podcasts. It started to grow though once we started kind of realizing the world that exists outside of. I think we always were siloed off in Pace, and then obviously George is a little more connected to the outside world with all the projects he's doing on a semesterly and weekly basis, and we started branching out and we were like, oh, and then we went to a conference, and then George was taking ETC president and elect, and all of a sudden all these people were like, oh, like we were like had all these people we could like, hey, come on our podcast, and it was like a snowball effect, and we were like, wow, this is actually really cool. And then like I was getting like texts from like family members like, hey, how come you haven't released a podcast in a while? I'm like, oh. And then yesterday I go on Spotify and it's like you have 72 subscribers, and I was like, I didn't know it. I mean, that's not a high number, but for us we were like, okay, we've been doing this for a year and we just hit 1,000 followers on Instagram. So like stuff like that, we're like, oh, this is like we're actually doing pretty good here. So it turned into initially like just let's do it for fun. I feel like George and I have known each other for over 20 years, so I feel like we have kind of a natural flow to when we chat and whatnot and get on the mic. We've tried to bring in some serious topics as well. We've done some mental health episodes. We brought in Chris Fitzpatrick from Crestron to talk about careers, which again had nothing to do with technology, but that was one of our best. It's gotten the best feedback out of all of our many of our episodes that are out there, just because it relates to anybody. It didn't just relate to anything tech specific. But let me stop there. I know George wants to jump in and
no,
give a little...
I'm good.
Yeah,
I
you're
mean
good?
everything. Well, no, I want to say 9 other things, but it really has been. What started as fun has really grown into something that I don't know what that something is. But it's special getting to know the community, getting to know folks like you guys. It's just been fun. And we're gonna keep doing it until people tell us to get off the air. So
yeah, and we try to relate it to the program that we're building too. So we always try to have an educational angle, but we also try to have a humorous angle. We talk about sports. We have like a word of the day. We have a silly sign off. We make ball jokes. Like we try to keep it very like lighthearted so that it's like just very personable and lax. And that's the type of people we are. So we try to be the same on our podcast as we are in real life. So.
That's awesome. One thing, getting to know you guys better, I definitely see that you have a lot that you want to give to the industry, and that this is a good sign of that. And thank you for doing it. And I think that all of these podcasts have a place, and in my opinion, just like ours, our audience is very focused, so it doesn't have to be big as long as it's quality. And we know that when people are listening and they're telling you that they like it, that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
That probably a good way for us to end this episode, but stand by because we will be doing another one with George and Rich, and we'll be talking about some questions for Ask the Programmer. Before we get there and we sign off on this one, why don't you guys tell us a little bit how people can get in touch with you and how they can listen to your podcast and also learn about your work at Pace. George, why don't you start?
Sure. I'm George Chacko. You can email me at gchacko@pace.edu. I'm on LinkedIn, gchacko. Twitter and Instagram handles are baldavguys, @baldavguys.
Yes. So echo that sentiment. You can find us on all the socials at baldavguys. We have a generic baldavguys@gmail.com, or if you want to learn more about our AV program, rmiller@pace.edu. You can also find me on LinkedIn as well.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. And James, any thoughts about this topic, and how can people get in touch with you and learn more about what you're up to?
So first off, if our listeners have not listened to their podcast, Capable Coffee and Curveballs, highly recommend. It's a great one. Also, Rich and George, when you have random people coming up to you at trade shows saying, hey, they like your podcast, then those are stepping stones. Like twice that happened to me, and I know I was all looking for you guys at Infocom this year. So your podcast is right up there in my list of podcasts. And then, as always, you can Google me, find me, Instant with HEPMA, Pirate AV, IT and AV column, Twitter, AV_James King, LinkedIn. Again, Google me, you'll find me.
Excellent. And for me, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social media, my company Control Concepts at controlconcepts.net. We also talking about podcasts. I do a podcast for AV Nation called The State of Control, which is also pertains to this audience, talks in a little bit of a different format about control automation and programming. And we've been doing that with Rich Fregosa for 9+ years. So that's a monthly show, but that's another one for this audience to listen to. But most importantly, please reach out to us. Let us know what you think. Please give a listen to Cables, Coffee, and Curveballs, and send them your love and reviews and likes and so forth. And let us know what you think about this episode and what you want to hear more about. And if you have something you would like to talk about, reach out, because we want to have more people on the show. And with that, this has been Ask the Programmer.